Veterans of the Long War. For 10,000 years, the traitor legions have dwelt within the maddening depths of the warp, forging pacts with infernal powers and plotting their vengeance upon the Emperor's thralls. For millennia, the spectre of the Horus heresy has haunted these accursed traitors, the lingering anguish of defeat gnawing at their pitch-black souls. For these bitter warriors, the fight has never ended. Whilst the Imperium still stands, their long war continues. In the lingering shadow of the Great Rift, the fruit of the War Master's ceaseless labour writ large across the stars, heretic Astartes, traitorous renegades and zealous cultists rally to the banners of the dark gods and their malefic champions. Before this tide of chaos, many within the Imperium quake, desperately seeking succour in faith and devotion to the Emperor. Their prayers and petitions are made in vain, for borne upon the howling winds of the warp does their doom approach. Now begins the age of vengeance. The galaxy will burn. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40K setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. And today, we shall be taking a wander around the new lore that was provided in the 10th edition codex for the Chaos Space Marines. Now, I have to admit that I'm working on a new Thaddeus video, so this one is mostly quoted from that tome. But I provide this service, as not many will gain the hard copy, and there are lore changes, amendments, and updates therein contained. I do not think that people should miss out. These codices are not cheap, so hence I will narrate them in my own distinctive style. Tales from the book will also be spattered throughout, as I found them acceptable, and thought you ought to be able to judge them for yourself. So, as usual, let us lean on the newest existing wisdom about the Arks of Omen, the Crimson Path, Vashtorr the Arkifane, and the Age of Vengeance. To quote, the priest's words rang through crackling loud-hailers. His voice reverberated across the bullet-scarred and cratered remnants of the Sanctorum complex, drifting upon an ashen breeze to echo over blood-drenched rubble. The light of the Emperor falls upon us, brothers and sisters. He is with us. He is your salvation. Trask Krath of the Black Legion let out a hacking peal of laughter at the hollow words. This world was beyond salvation. He strode between the fallen effigies of long-dead saints, bolt-gun clasped tightly in ebon-armored gauntlets. Before him, human soldiers fled deeper into the ruins, wailing pleas for aid to their unheeding corpse guard, and clasping holy icons in trembling hands. Their faith would not save them. Tarask reveled his bolt pistol towards the fleeing rabble. The auto-sensors of his ancient helm projected targeting runes across his mind's eye. Selecting a victim, he pulled the trigger. The weapon's demon war muzzle flared and a shell slammed into the fleeing human's back. Flak armor erupted. Blood, viscera, and fragments of shattered bone splattered across marble flagstone and fallen statues. His fellow legionaries opened fire with their own bolt guns. Fleeing soldiers dropped in their dozens, and the wounded wailed their last. Krath's brothers followed him through the crumbling city of Sarinth, their black and gold armor caked in dust and gore. He felt his twin hearts beating hard within his chest, adrenaline and combat stims coursing through his blood. How long had he awaited this opportunity? To tread upon the soil of the Imperium and bring destruction and ruin to its treacherous heart. Victory was near. Only Sarenth's primary cathedral remained. A haze of smoke and ash had settled over Sarenth's burning streets, thrown up by orbital bombardment and bitter fighting. The shell-scarred and partially destroyed facade of the cathedral rose out of the gloom before the heretic Astartes. It stood atop a steep mound, the skeletal remains of its spire smouldering, wisps of smoke spiraling towards the dusky sky. The remnants of Glaseag shimmering in the dying light. At the base of the structure, Imperial soldiers scurried between sandbags, tank traps, and coils of razor wire. Krath let out a guttural cry and raised his chain axe high above his head to signal the advance. "Storm the cathedral!" he cried. "Slay them all! Glory to the Despoiler!" Cowled cultists, turncoat guardsmen, and shambling mutants surged forwards past the legionaries, howling their fury. They cast an array of primitive weapons in hands and tentacular appendages. Toiling up the rubble slope towards the base of the cathedral, they charged into a lethal rain of bullets and lasbolts. Scores fell in seconds, yet dozens more reached trenches and bunkers, hurling themselves upon the defenders with crude clubs and axes. Others followed, seizing weapons from fallen soldiers and hurling makeshift explosives and incendiary bombs into the vision slits of squat bunkers. The stench of tarred flesh drifted on the ashen breeze. Krath and his legionaries moved forward steadily, stepping over the ruined bodies of the cultists and soldiers, firing point-blank bolt-gun shots at anything that moved. The slope was already littered with the bodies of the fallen. Slumped over trenched parapets, severed limbs and viscera coated the ground, and the anguished cries of the wounded and dying were audible above the priests' febrile prayers. Through the carnage and choking smoke, the legionaries marched, bolt guns roaring with each heavy stride. Lasgun fire and autogun shells slammed into Krath's ebon armor, scoring shallow marks upon the ancient plate. Mortar rounds exploded in their midst, flinching clouds of shrapnel and shattered rock felling robed cultists. Still the Black Legion advanced, the fervent, futile prayers of the priests ringing loud above the din of battle. Krath's eyes were drawn up towards the gigantic stone arch that marked the cathedral's entrance. Movement. Wooden door swung slowly open, and out of the smouldering structure strode 5 figures clad in gleaming bronze power armor, bullhead icons emblazed on their white pauldrons. Krath grimaced, teeth grinding together, hearts pumping ever faster as the fury swelled within him. Adeptus Astartes. The Emperor's puppets were here. The Space Marines raised long bolt rifles and began opening fire, thinning the surging tide of cultists with disciplined volleys. Krath growled at the sight of the loyalists. So proud, he thought to himself. So honorable. I will paint this cathedral with their blood and offer their bones to the dark gods. Krath broke into a loping run, armored feet crushing wire and bodies as he pounded relentlessly forward. His brothers followed him up the slope, tossing grenades into trenches and bludgeoning human soldiers with the stocks of their bolt guns as they went. Krath lashed out at a cowering guardsman, chain axe ripping clean through armor and flesh, bisecting his victim in a single stroke. The defenders quailed before the assault, fleeing from the Black Legionaries, scrambling for the cathedral doors. "Steel yourself against the darkness! Fall not into temptation nor cowardice! The Emperor protects! His angels come!" The priest howled again. Leaping over a trench, Krath barreled into a trio of cowering humans, knocking them from their feet. One unfortunate fell backwards into the dirt, the heretic Astartes' ceramite boot crushing down on his chest, splintering bones and pressing in deep into clawing mud. Krath dispatched the remaining soldiers with well-aimed axe strokes, never taking his eyes from the Space Marines. Hundreds of years of bitter enmity burned within his breast. The Space Marines had now turned their attention upon the Black Legionaries, bolt rifles snapping towards Krath and his fellow warriors. A volley of shells streaked into the heretic Astartes. To Krath's left, one of their number was struck, an explosive bolt round embedding itself into the vox grill and detonating with a dull thud. Ceramite armor splintered, taking half of the legionary's face with it. He fell backwards, gargling, grasping at his throat as thick blood filled his lungs. His brothers lumbered on, leaving him to expire in the filth. Krath felt a shell impact upon his right knee pad, causing him to stumble but failing to penetrate his power armor. He was close now, no more than 20 feet from his quarry. The Space Marine spread out to meet the charge, drawing bolt pistols from leather holsters. Krath bellowed a war cry as he covered the remaining distance in long bounding strides. "We are returned! Death to the false Emperor!" The Space Marine sergeant slid a power sword from its sheath and raised it into a guard position. A shimmering force field hummed into life around the polished blade. The smouldering lenses of Krath's demonic helm met the blank stare of the loyalist warrior. The two combatants hit with bone-crushing force, the energy field of the Space Marine's power sword emitting a shower of sparks as it met the adamantine teeth of Krath's chain axe. Weapons locked together, breastplates clashing, they lashed out with elbows, knees, and feet to strike the foe. Breaking apart again, Krath launched immediately into a flurry of strikes. His opponent's sword flashed left and right to turn aside the killing blows before thrusting forwards to counter. Black Legionaries' bolt pistols roared, shells punching craters into ceramite plate. The blades of loyalists and traitor Space Marines sliced and gouged their metal and flesh. Both warriors were oblivious to the battle escalating around them, utterly absorbed by their duel. A backhand strike from the Space Marine caught Krath's bolt pistol, shearing through its muzzle. He released his grip upon the ruined weapon and struck back with his chain axe, burying its teeth into the bronze warrior's flank. The chain blade whined as it bit deep, releasing a shower of shredded armor and flecks of blood. The loyalist kicked out, knocking Krath backwards. "Traitor!" the Space Marine growled, his pained voice dripping with contempt. Krath grunted dismissively, lunging forward and kicking the left leg from under the Space Marine sergeant. His opponent stumbled. Krath grasped his chain axe in both hands, raising it over his head, before bringing it down in an overhead strike. The wounded Space Marine raised his sword to block the blow. The force of Krath's strike drove the loyalist to his knees. Krath struck again, the whirring teeth grinding through ceramite armor, flesh and bone, severing the loyalist's left arm at the elbow. A brief spurt of blood emerged from the stump. The severed hand twitched, bolt pistol still clutched in its grasp. Krath's boot slammed down upon the Space Marine sword arm, pinning it to the floor. Glaring at the prone loyalist, Krath recalled the lies he had once believed. To die for the Emperor is the greatest reward. The Emperor protects. Such notions were as false as the corpse Emperor's divinity. He swung his chain axe again, driving it into the helm of his victim. Blood splashed across the gilt trim of his armor. Still grasping the hilt of his blood-spattered weapon, Krath gazed around at the remains of the smoldering city. From all directions, black legionaries emerged from burning streets alongside ranks of traitor guardsmen and lumbering demon engines bristling with hellish weapons. The sky churned with contrails and plumes of smoke. Through the clouds thundered loyalist reinforcements, bronze-colored aerial transports, and the burning contrails of descending drop pods. Krath laughed, a wheezing cackle devoid of mirth, wrenching his weapon free from the skull of the dead Space Marine and turning to face the foe. The long war was far from over. The Crimson Path. With the strength of the Black Legion at his command, Abaddon intends to succeed where his predecessors failed. To break the Imperial Palace open and tear the Emperor's corpse from the Golden Throne. Over the millennia, each of his conquests has gradually paved the way from the Eye of Terror towards the Sol System. Less obvious, however, is that along this path, his actions have gradually unpicked the veil between real space and the warp. During the course of his long years on the threshold of the Eye, Abaddon discovered a strange truth about the barrier between the warp and the Imperium. Dotted across the galaxy were ancient structures of blackstone, stark and monolithic on the outside, but extremely complex within. There were many of these upon the fortress world of Cadia, known as pylons to the aliens' militarized populace. They were so old that none gave them more than a passing thought. It was Abaddon's belief that these structures were the very things that maintained the stability of the Cadian Gate, keeping the energies of the warp from spilling through the Eye of Terror and cascading into real space. For thousands of years, the Despoiler sent his agents across the galaxy to locate these monoliths of Blackstone. He spent many years calling in old alliances, striking demonic bargains and invoking ancient pacts with the traitor legions and their corrupt primarchs. Thread by tenuous thread, the Despoiler put together a plan to isolate and destroy these structures, using false objectives or even entire black crusades to conceal his true motives. Over the course of several world-scouring invasions, Abaddon shattered or toppled these structures wherever he found them, sometimes in person, at other times using his agents, his apocalyptic ship, the Planet Killer, or the immense Blackstone fortresses he co-opted during the Gothic War. The last and greatest of these destructive campaigns was levelled at Cadia itself. Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade brought about so much death and destruction that his demonic allies were able to breach real space through the Cadian system, sustained by the unbridled mayhem that raged around them. The demolition of the strange black monoliths scattered across Cadia's surface was finally achieved, the capstone of a grand design that tied together the cataclysmic events on Pandorax, Fenris, the planet of the sorcerers, and a dozen worlds besides. Suddenly, the manifold armies of chaos were free to pour into real space, like blood from a deep wound. As the galaxy was split along its length, with warp storms raging in 100 locations and more, those traitor legions and renegade chapters who had sworn allegiance to the War Master formed the vanguard of the invasion. They formed a broad-headed spear that had plunged deep into the heart of the Cadian system and emerged from the other side. Abaddon cared little how many casualties were amassed as his great agenda came to fruition. His only concern was to saturate Imperial territory with blood, summoning more demonic armies to his cause. This is a strategy Abaddon intended to see replicated on world after world as he extended the trial of destruction known as the Crimson Path. Each planetary invasion brought him closer to terror, with the nightmare armies of the demon lords following in his wake. Yet Abaddon's own ambition extends far beyond assaulting the Sol system and the destruction of the Golden Throne. The Crimson Path is but one element of his vengeance. While the Dark Gods and their followers see terror as the ultimate prize, the final battleground is a war between reality and unreality, Abaddon is only too aware that such an eventuality bodes ill for a mortal being, even one as powerful as he. He has no intention of relying upon the gods in order to achieve the victories he desires. The Despoiler is, however, more than content for the forces of chaos to drive on towards the Sol system. The High Lords of Terror live in fear of real space collapsing entirely, and are sending every military force they can muster to halt Abaddon's rampage. In doing so, they draw ships and soldiers away from other regions in the galaxy, weakening other targets and priming them for Abaddon's invasions. As the drama plays out to its desperate conclusion, one thing remains certain: unending war. The Era of Vengeance. The advent of the Great Rift has provided an opportunity for the forces of chaos to operate within reality in numbers not seen since the Horus Heresy. While the Imperium Sanctus has not been spared from their predations, it is in the Imperium Nihilus that the forces of chaos are strongest. This is a realm shrouded in darkness and riven by warp storms, deprived of the light of the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that guides the Imperium's astropathic navigators through the void. The systems of the Imperium Nihilus find themselves vulnerable to the attacks of vengeful heretic Astartes, ravening demon hordes, and renegade warbands. The defenders of those worlds within the Imperium Nihilus are for the most part scattered, separated from one another by vast gulfs of space. These isolated systems, severed from the Imperium at large, have proven fertile breeding grounds for chaos cults and prime targets for invasion. The word-bearers and their dark apostles sow blasphemous worship throughout underhives and manufactorums, conducting blood-drenched rituals as they bring the malefic word of the dark gods to the malcontented and downtrodden. Predatory Night Lord warbands descend upon terrified populaces, slaughtering millions. The Iron Warriors seek to besiege and lay low the mightiest fortresses, breaking open the walls of colossal bastions before establishing their own labyrinthine strongholds atop the crumbling foundations. In the face of such aggression, Imperial defenders struggle to stem the tide of chaos. In the Baal system, Commander Dante musters what strength he can to defend the Imperium Nihilus, dispatching the sons of Sanguinius to lend aid to those he can. The newly returned Primarch of the Dark Angels, Lion L. Johnson, leads the battle-depleted chapter in bold campaigns to liberate worlds. Night Lances, Astra Militarum relief forces, and overstretched elements of multiple Space Marine chapters do what they can to fight the darkness. Yet all these efforts are but vain gestures, mere drops in a boiling ocean of violence and misery. The Imperium Sanctus may still benefit from the Emperor's light, but it has not managed to escape the attentions of chaos. In the Nachmund Gauntlet, that region of space that connects the Imperium Nihilus and Sanctus, Harken World Claimer, the Herald of Abaddon, drives the Black Legion ever forward, planting his hell spear in the surfaces of Imperial worlds and proclaiming their doom. In the Ultima Segmentum and beyond, the Alpha Legion undertake insidious plots under the noses of Imperial War Masters, assassinating key officials and inciting rebellions that consume entire systems. In the region surrounding the Warp Rift known as the Maelstrom, the Red Corsairs continue to prey upon shipping, both Imperial and Xenos. Imperial armies have responded as best they can to these ever-present threats. Upon the orders of Repute Gilliman, the Indomitus Crusade fleet struck out from Terra to relieve worlds lost or besieged in the wake of the Great Rift. Yet even these colossal battle fleets cannot hope to extinguish every blazing inferno. Conflicts rage across scores of systems, and in each one can be found the hand of the Despoiler. Under Abaddon's domineering leadership, the Black Legion presses onwards across dozens of fronts. The Arks of Omen and their attendant Baal fleets, in the hands of demon princes, chaos lords and sorcerers, steeped in the dark magics of the warp, ride upon the tides of the Imperium. These baleful vessels emerge from the void to inflict devastation upon the systems unfortunate enough to lie in their path. While the armies of chaos are ascendant, Abaddon knows that his crusade must continue its unrelenting momentum, for only through continued conquest may he maintain the fragile alliances required in order to bring the Imperium to its knees. The Traitor's Tarot. Vaesa came to the underworld with bone in one hand and a weapon in the other. The former was an offering, a token of necessary sacrifice. The latter was a guard against treachery, a bared blade generations old, a thing of mutated steel that drank life with a parasite's thirst. The armor he wore was brass-edged, red of holiness or heresy, depending just where one stood on the matter of either precept. His helmet, once crested with the sigil of a gladiator's brutality, was now crowned with the sign of the war god. Tick, tick, tick went the pain engine in the back of his skull, threatening agony unless it was appeased with blood and adrenaline. It sent shivers through him, spasms devoid of pleasure, that made acidic saliva run stingy over his lips, leaking through the grate of his grinding teeth. Around him, the walls of the cave shifted with tectonics that obeyed thoughts and fears instead of physics. The faces that formed from the ancient rock sneered and mocked him for his many sins and treacheries across the centuries. He ignored them. They told him nothing he didn't already know. The prophetess before him was a wasted, emaciated thing. She had been human once. Now she could only lay the barest claim to her Genesis species. The creature that squatted in the cave's core possessed altogether too many limbs, too many mouths, and too many eyes, and saw past her prison of enclosing stone. She, perhaps it was a better term, clung wretchedly to the rags that wrapped her, as though they were vestments of a divine calling. When Vashtorr dropped the offerings of bone before her, she turned to him with an animal lurch. 7 trembling hands, each as skinny as a child's, caressed the skull that lay before her. Blind eyes milked over by revelation turned unerringly to the warrior standing nearby. "Greetings," the prophetess murmured through 3 of her mouths. "Vashtorr of the Gorsworn." He grunted in reply. "I brought you what you wanted." Some of her mouth smiled, though not all of them. "You are lying, but you nevertheless hope the sacrifice is good enough to please me." He gave a reluctant acknowledgement. "And is it?" She stroked the skull with tiny overlong fingers. "It is not about pleasing me. It is about pleasing those that watch over us, and to the quality of your offering." "I did as you asked. I killed my most beloved brother." "Yes, and no." She hushed him, pressing several fingers to several of her mouths. "You killed the brother you loved most, but I bade you bring me the skull of the brother you most feared to lose. But let us not argue the semantics of the inhuman heart, Vashtorr. What's done is done. It may still be enough." From within the tattered remnants of her clothing, she drew a collection of crystal cards. They darkened to the color of blood the moment she sat them upon the ground before her. "Ask what you came to ask," she bade him. "I will answer." "Tell me my future." Vashtorr felt his pulse quicken as both hearts started beating harder. This made some of her mouth smile, though again, not all of them. "There are so many futures for you and your kind, Vashtorr, a plethora of pathways, with every beat of your heart paving 1,000,000 more. I may speak only to those I can see." "Tell me," Vashtorr repeated. "Tell me what is to come." The prophetess touched filthy fingers to the cards, awakening them one by one. "Time passes. The long war rages. The bonds of legion loyalty decay, becoming precious to some and a burden to others. You are an eater of worlds, but no longer only an eater of worlds. You are one of the Gorsworn. You fight for your warband more than for your legion. You wage war for practicalities, for realities, not for ideologies. You fight for the territory you hold and the territory you wish to conquer. You fight those of your legion as often as you fight those of other bloodlines. This is the way of things within the Empire of the Eye. You meet those that still heed your Primarch's every wrathful word. You meet with those whose ties to Angron are a relic of an embarrassing past. Sometimes you fight with one side over the other. Sometimes you cannot see which side is which. Sometimes you let them butcher one another without wasting a shred of conscience or care. Angron is your father, your demigod, and you love him. Angron is a failure, a selfish thrall to higher powers, and you despise him. In 600 years, you are killed by the Lord of the Hound's Jaw's warband. You are cut down in battle before his men. each of them laughing at your defeat. Your corpse is impaled upon the gates of their fortress as a warning to others who would dare defy them. Or you are not killed. 6 centuries from now, you swear eternal brotherhood with the Hound's jaws. The pacts hold, despite incremental treacheries on both sides. You are loyal to one another. You fight side by side, and where you had died on another path, now you raise your blade in triumph. You answer every call upon Legion honor as a loyal son of your Primarch. You raise the banners of the 12th Legion. You are respected for this by some. You are mocked for it by others. You overcome the conflicts of blood ritual and cannibal faith between World-Eater warbands in the name of the oldest bonds. You rise through the shattered ranks of your ancient legion, or you die for it, for your refusal to evolve and move past these archaic family ties. Or you turn your back on these legion musters, for you are gatherings of naked delusion beneath banners that no longer matter. You are feared for your strength in overcoming these eroded, useless bonds. You are also despised for turning your back on them. Because of your principles, you are considered prey by many warbands, yet allies you would never have met instead come forth, offering newer, realer bonds that will bring you greater victories. Along some of the paths, these alliances will one day see you dead and forgotten. Along others, these pacts will one day bring you a state of exaltation. Half a century from now, your crippled fleet drifts into another warband's territory, a cluster of worlds claimed by the pallid raptors of the 3rd Legion. You need succor. You need ammunition, repairs, resupply. They destroy you and take your vessels, or they grant you the aid you require at a most punishing price, forcing you to serve them for the span of 3 human lifetimes. Or they aid you without hesitation, recognizing your shared strength. You meet with their lords and swear unity to one another. The Gore-Sworn and the Pallid Raptors become the Claws of Bronze. This new, stronger warband lasts until the very end of days, serving its own needs over the desires of its opposing guards, or it lasts a handful of years, torn apart by competing faiths and old grudges given to new mutiny. The blood of the sons of Horus is on your hands. You butchered them in the Legion Wars for the sin of their failure at Terra. You and those like you bled them to extinction. But they are no more. Now there is the Legion that eclipses all others, the Black Legion, the new lords of Hell's Empire. They come for you. They blacken the skies above your new home world. You refuse their demands of resources, of territory, of pride. You fight them. You are killed. Your bones are ground to powder, used in the alchemical games of Abaddon's sorcerers. Or you beat them. Once, how proud you are, how you glory in your strength, and the next time they come, they pull apart your planet with a chorus of sky fire. Every one of your warriors faces a dozen clad in rebellious black. Or you join them. You swear the oath of black and gold. You are a world eater no more, becoming an apostate to your father's failures. You see how the Primarchs are slaves to the powers that deceive them. You cast your lot in with the future, ripping away the shames of the past. Abaddon will not fail as Horus failed. Armed in the War Master's black, the Gore-Sworn have countless other warbands to call upon in battle. You rise through the hierarchy to stand at the War Master's side. In 3,000 years, you oversee the siege of Jerusalem, a prince world of the Dark Mechanicum. When it falls to your will, your legion honors your many triumphs. You become one of the Ezekarian, the favored, the chosen of Abaddon. Or you are executed. With your defeat at Jerusalem, you have failed the War Master for the final time. His fleshsmiths flay you, sustaining your life through sorcery and surgery, ensuring you feel every moment, as you are rendered down to a skeleton wired together only with nerves and pain receptors. Only then are you allowed to die. Or even then, you are not permitted to expire. You are ritually delimbed and chained into a prison the size of a sarcophagus, fed only hate and rage for the rest of eternity. Your coffin is fused to the front of a war engine, and weapons are gifted to you as arms. You march with the legion you failed, atoning in your eternal death for the crimes of your life. Or you die centuries before any of these ends, murdered by your lieutenant Zelath, who even now whispers to the rest of your warriors that you are weak, that the alliances you make are poor compromises, that the destiny you promise is a childish lie. He leads half of the Gorsworn in a rebellion against you. You lose. Falling in humiliation, you are devoured by his demonic pets. He takes your skull as an offering to the war god, the god of blood, and leaves his renegades to a fate I cannot see. Or you win. You take his head, sanctifying it to the blood god. Or you have your slaves expel their waste upon Zelath's body, and deem his skull too petty to be worth taking. There are other uprisings as the years become centuries, and the centuries bleed into millennia. Brothers you trust with what remains of your soul become mortal enemies. They worship other gods, or the same god in ways you cannot tolerate, through means you cannot yet conceive. Brothers you despise will become chained to you through bonds of loyalty you cannot yet imagine. The Gorsworn put down their banners one day, ascending to an ever greater state. You lead your men into the ranks of the bearers of the word, becoming one with the warband known as the Sanctified. You become a lord of Lorgar's legion. Your blood-drenched worship of the war god is a tale of terrible legend throughout the Imperium. Or the Gorsworn hunt the Sanctified down, slaughtering them for daring to send their raving preachers into your territory aboard your fleets. You earn the eternal enmity of the word-bearers for your refusal to see the same truths as them. You earn the favor and gratitude of the word-bearers from warbands within their ranks that detest the apostate cult, calling itself the Sanctified. 200 years from this night, you lead the Gorsworn on a raid into reality. The Imperium is waiting for you, not with a bristling battle fleet, but with a mercantile armada ripe with potential slaves. The raid's capstone, its true prize, is Gene Seed. You ally with the Bleeding Eyes warband to lay waste to the homeworld of the Silver Eagles chapter. The Night Lords betray you. They leave you to die, escaping with the Gene Seed reserves themselves. Or you betray them, escaping with what you desire, earning countless enemies amongst the 8th Legion for your cowardice, earning just as many admirers for your cunning. With Gene Seed reserves, you can grow your ranks, but such currency is valuable. You choose to trade it, exchanging the stolen life for forbidden treasures of demonic flesh and mechanicum iron, fused into weapons of horror. You spend centuries eradicating your closest rival warbands, becoming feared and despised. Or you become a target. Stronger warbands carve into your domain, prying what they came for from your lifeless fingers. You live long enough to call upon your allies, other warbands that owe you life or service from wars fought together in the past. They answer, and you push back the invaders. They answer, but they see your weakness, allying with your foes and spitting on your old oaths. They never answered at all, because they were destroyed long ago in battles whose word never reached you. In this realm in which you hide, where lies become reality, and reality is a lie. 10 days from now you are killed in an orbital bombardment. You die in the rubble, your body crushed, your gene seed unsalvageable. Your last breaths are spent as curses. You will never know if those curses come true. 1,000 years from now... "Stop!" said Vashtorr. "Enough!" The prophetess smiled, this time with all her mouths, even the ones hidden beneath her hood. "But you've heard almost nothing yet. I've spoken so few of the possibilities before you." "You mock me!" The warrior's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. "You toy with me, spinning these lies!" The prophetess regarded him with most of her eyes. Some were human, others held the glass gaze of the dead. Still others seemed bestial, openly animal. "Every word I have said is true. Every one of these paths may yet come to pass." "Tell me what fate is likeliest. Tell me what will happen, not what might happen." "I would have to guess." She said the word like it tasted of poison. "I do not like guessing." His eyes narrowing, the nails in his skull tick, tick, ticking. "Try." The prophetess drew her spindly arms back into her rags. She didn't need her cards for this. "On so many paths, this is your truth. Vashtorr, a timeless span from now, the gifts you seek to earn on the path to glory become too much for your mind and soul. You chase immortality, and you fail. You devolve, you degenerate. You are spawn. You are fed nutrient sludge and cast off bones from various battlefields, kept as a pet by your former brothers. Every moment is pain and shame, yet the part of you that can still reason, the humanity within the inhuman form, still aches to please the blood god. You pray with no voice for forgiveness that will never come. This is how your journey ends on an overwhelming number of possible paths. Nothing is certain, but this is as close to certain as any prophecy can be." She saw the signs of his rising anger. The prophetess pulled back her hood, revealing several faces that hadn't been human in over 1,000 years. She fixed him with a dozen mismatched eyes. The path of glory has only two eventual ends: ascension or degeneration, demonic princehood or spawndom. If you wish to fight this fate, heed well my words. The Arks of Omen. It is a time of great portent, an age in which the might of chaos waxes as never before, and the galaxy is ripe for conquest. With Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade cutting a bloody swathe across the stars, Vashtorr saw fit to once again manifest, this time before the Despoiler himself. In Abaddon, he saw a worthy ally with whom he could complete a work so ambitious in its scope that no other had come close to divining its possibility. Though the War Master was suspicious at first, an attitude forged through hard-earned experience and millennia of dealing with demonic entities, the two soon came to an understanding. Vashtorr offered the Despoiler a bargain. The Arkifane wished to gain a wealth of scattered artifacts that he referred to only as key fragments, as well as 3 metaphysical devices. These items could be melded together to reassemble a webway tunneling engine, first created by the Old Ones. By piecing these components together, Vashtorr claimed he would be able to unlock a dimensional vault within which lay a weapon of such power that would surely bring about Abaddon's ultimate victory in real space. Vashtorr would in turn achieve such triumph and worship amongst the galaxy's mortal denizens that he would achieve the apotheosis he sought and become the 5th great chaos god of the warp. Together, Vashtorr and Abaddon gathered from the depths of the warp dozens of space hulks, Immense vessels formed from wrecked void ships fused together by the power of that realm. Magi of the Dark Mechanicum, employing the forbidden teachings of Vashtorr, slaved to work twisted alterations upon each of these hulks, transforming them into distorted and anarchic behemoths known as the Arks of Omen. The Arks would be commanded by renegade warlords and champions of the Dark Gods, who had knelt before Abaddon and sworn to complete the tasks he set them. Each Ark of Omen would be accompanied upon its journey by a formidable flotilla of renegade warships. These were the Bale fleets. The Bale fleet spread out across the galaxy, blotting out the stars above countless worlds, striking not only Imperial bastions, but Necron tomb worlds, Eldari maiden worlds, the homes of the kin, and hundreds of other targets besides. Each Ark was tasked by Vashtorr with locating and seizing disparate artifacts and fragmentary relics. Each of these seemingly insignificant items was ancient indeed, steeped in ritual significance. Together, these fragments would combine to form Vashtorr's key. Gathering them would be no simple task, however. Some Bale fleets foundered, lost on the tides of the warp, consumed by the hungry tendrils of Tyranid high fleets, obliterated in devastating void battles, or waylaid by internecine conflicts. Yet the Bale fleets that survived ground slowly and inexorably onwards, crushing worlds and obliterating the enemy fleets that blocked their path. Piece by piece, their commanders gathered the key fragments Vashtorr acquired. Wormwood. With myriad key fragments delivered into his grasp by the Arks of Omen, Vashtorr's key, or dissonance engine, had been given form. The key fragments had now transpired, had been scattered throughout time and space in the aftermath of the calamitous destruction of Caliban, homeworld of the Dark Angels. Vashtorr had combined these artifacts with remnants of shattered planetoids, colossal demonic engines, and his own infernal sorcery, to create a horrific demonic engine whose form mocked that of Caliban. Within the warp-saturated depths of this demon world, the webway-sundering mechanisms of the dissonance engine turned. Vashtorr acquired only the final piece of his metaphysical machine to complete his work. He set about luring the Dark Angels into an assault on his stronghold in the idolatrous system. There, the unforgiven chapters arrived in force, engaging Vashtorr, his demonic thralls, and the Black Legion in a furious battle. The ensuing conflict drew in the demon Primarch Angron and his World Eaters, as well as the returned Lion L. Johnson, who was accompanied to battle by Commander Dante and a detachment of Blood Angels. Though the fighting was fierce and losses on all sides were heavy, Vashtorr succeeded in retrieving that which he sought. With the final engine secured, the Arkifane set it alongside the others, and Wormwood, his dissonance engine, stirred to life. Its awakening shook the demon world to its core. Creeping tendrils of warp flame and crackling emerald light burst forth, emanating from the trio of metaphysical engines fused together at Wormwood's heart. The souls trapped beneath the demon world's surface cried out in agony as they were consumed by rampant empiric energies. The decimated loyalists, the lion amongst them, were left with no choice but to retreat. Vashtorr's victory had not come without cost. Their combined forces had suffered terrible losses, including an Ark of Omen and thousands of mortal warriors. This was a price gladly paid, for Vashtorr had assembled the key. Since that day, the true nature and power of Wormwood has become abundantly apparent. This twisted device is capable of rending the very fabric of reality and tunneling into the spaces between the Imperium and the warp. Wormwood is a twisted perversion of the great tunneling machines utilized by the Old Ones to create the webway. Suffused as it is with the malefic energies of the warp, its passage is heralded well before its emergence into real space. Celestial bodies drift into impossible alignments, machine spirits display aberrant behavior, and Auspex devices return wild energy spikes and impossible readings. The citizens of worlds caught in its path find themselves subject to terrible nightmares, clawed talons reaching down from the heavens of souls wreathed in sulphurous flames, screaming in agony as their very essences are burned from existence. Those fortunate enough to gaze to the heavens at the time of Wormwood's emergence are confronted with a sight of horrifying magnificence. The fabric of space tears, ghostly tendrils of energy dance forth like solar flares. Plumes of vapor thousands of miles long illuminate the firmament. The demon world's hideous form stretches and twists as it takes shape amidst a swirling whirlpool of utter blackness. Few have witnessed Wormwood's translation into or out of reality retain even a shred of their sanity. Vashtorr's search. It is Vashtorr's understanding that Wormwood is the key to some as yet undiscovered metaphysical lock. He believes that when key meets lock, a vault shall be opened. Within this vault, Vashtorr believes the key to his ascension resides. Thus, he bends all of his efforts towards finding the lock. Wormwood now sighs its way through the galaxy, following a search pattern unfathomable to all save for Vashtorr himself. Often, he is accompanied by his Black Legion allies, the heretic Astartes riding the wake of Wormwood's passage and striking regions of the Imperium previously beyond their grasp. Those agents of the Emperor's will who know of Wormwood are hamstrung by the colossal breadth of the Imperium. With their reliance upon astropathic communication and the existence of the Great Rift, they cannot hope to react swiftly enough to intercept the Dissonance Engine's interstellar passage. Unbound by the paltry laws of time and space, Wormwood has appeared in multiple sectors, crossing gulfs that would take Imperial ships months to traverse in mere hours. It has unleashed Vashtorr's demonic allies and heretic Astartes followers upon systems previously thought far beyond the reach of such assaults. By the time astropathic cries for help are received and the lumbering mechanisms of local Imperial forces can respond, Vashtorr and his demon world are long departed, leaving behind ruined worlds, the warped scars of Wormwood's passage, the only clear sign of their presence. Even the Asuryani and their gifted seers, enraged at Wormwood's corruption of webway technology, and wary of its potential to shatter the integrity of those extra-dimensional passageways, have thus far proven unable to decipher a true pattern of Wormwood's movements. Only craftworld Altanasar, its Asuryani well versed in the nature of the warp and the scars it leaves upon reality, have been able to make any headway tracking the demon world's passage. Thus far, however, their attempts to bring Vashtorr to battle have been met only with abject failure. Whisperings from the Nephilim sector speak of a colossal astral anomaly bursting into being within the Pariah Nexus, whilst panicked reports of interstellar singularities echo through the void from the vicinity of the Ghoul stars and beyond. If these reports describe Wormwood, it is clear that no corner of the galaxy is safe from Vashtorr's wrath. Conflicts with the galaxy's various factions are little more than minor inconveniences to Vashtorr. For as an empiric being, he does not share the limited, linear perspective of mortals. Though the machinations of others may delay his search for the vault, time is of no consequence to him. He will have his prize, regardless of the vast distances he must travel, or the blood he must spill in order to obtain that which he seeks. Within the heart of Wormwood, bathed in the roiling energies of the warp, Vashtorr felt the familiar yet uncomfortable tug upon his being. Reality beckoned once more, the thronotic scrap code chants of mortal supplicants drawing his essence through its veil. Wormwood's passage had slowed. He had arrived at his destination. He allowed his consciousness to be drawn out of the comforting embrace of the warp. The Arkifane's essence emerged from the Imperium in a maelstrom of empiric energy. As he began to take form, his senses sharpened, revealing his surroundings. His still coalescing body hung suspended in a vortex of swirling energies above a charnel pit of ruined corpses and twisted metal. Cables, jagged scrap, and viscera ripped free from the gathered offerings and were drawn up into the vortex, melding together, to create his demonic form. Through fleshly formed lumen eyes, he took in his surroundings and stepped forward from the swirling miasma of empiric energy, dropping onto a mass of ruined corpses. He stood at the center of an ancient, half-destroyed city, its stone buildings eroded by the passage of the millennia. Before him, looming out of the ruins, its stone edifice etched with the jagged ruins of demonic scripture, was the temple he had sought. The Arkifane could feel the warp energies radiating from the structure. Battle raged all around him. Tau flyers dueled with flame-breathing helldrakes beneath darkening skies. Black legionaries pressed towards the temple structure, overrunning Tau infantry and cutting them to shreds. The vast shadow of Wormwood blotted out the light of the system's star, cloaking the city in darkness. He glanced up to the heavens, observing the ominous sphere of Wormwood as it slid across the astral void to complete its eclipse. The halo light of the star's corona, filtered through the corrupted atmosphere of the demonic world, glowed with the sickly yellow of a malfunctioning lumen. Vashtorr the Arkifane strode out of the summoning circle, iron-shod hooves mashing butchered Tau bodies into the dirt. He cocked his horned head, writhing mechadendrils extruding from his demonic flesh. The snaking cables whipped around his form like lashing tongues, tasting the air. Even here, on the world's surface, he could sense that which he sought, a mellifluous hum that called to him. The augurs had proven correct. At his feet knelt the three sorcerers who had coaxed him from the dissonance engine's core. His gaze cast its baleful light over their armored forms and came to rest upon their leader. The figure met his infernal gaze, black eyes peering out from beneath a trio of horns and a bloated, throbbing cranium. Its mouth was a mass of tangled mechadendrils and spherical vox casters. "O Master of the Soul Forge, the Tau are an unexpected complication. We have yet to breach the temple," the sorcerer hissed and crackled. "Futile is their resistance. Wormwood aligns. The oculation seals their doom," Vashtorr replied. "Rally your warriors. Valkar, empower the demon engines. Destroy the interlopers." As the dread sphere of Wormwood settled into position above the planet, the ground began to shake beneath Vashtorr's feet. Wide cracks opened across the glassy plains, pitching Tau warriors and black legionaries into cavernous crevices. The buildings, shield networks and gun platforms erected by the Tau were toppled as tectonic disturbances rippled out across the world's crust. Monolithic structures heaved up from the planet's depths by Wormwood's unnatural gravitic forces. As the Earth split, fountains of magma spilled from the ruptured crust, raining lethal molten rock down upon the combatants. The sheer number of Black Legion bodies scattered across the battlefield evidenced the Tau warriors' stiff resistance. Now, however, they fell back in disorder, their lines shattered by the unexpected geological catastrophe. Cultist devotees, their bodies rife with mechanical mutation, cables trailing from their pallid flesh, charged forward. The mutated humans swept past Vashtorr's towering form, Valkar's booming orders urging them forwards. "The Master of the Soul Forge walks among us. Show him your dedication." The cultists screeched static battle cries as they fell upon cowering alien soldiers, bludgeoning and slashing with their accursed weapons. Still, the fleeing Tau continued to fire, their pulse rifles lighting up the battlefield and the whip crack of rail rifles competing with the roar of Black Legion bolt guns. Through the violence, the Arkifane strode, bullets and shells turned aside by his unholy might. Vashtorr could feel the call of the relic, its warp-drenched aura rippling through the crust of the planet, pleading for release. He returned his gaze upon the stone facade of the temple. Scores of Tau soldiers blocked his path. The irritating infestation of mortals would have to be cleared. Abaddon's whelps had their uses. A slavering hell-forged monstrosity scurried past the Arkifane, sulphurous smoke trailing from exhaust vents, clawed feet scratching gouges as it leapt forwards. The Arkifane extended a clawed hand, nematode tendrils manifested at his bidding, boring their way into the demon engine's body. Infernal musculature rippled and bulged, metal plates tensing and hardening. The demon engine roared, its cry laced with fury. Empowered by Vashtorr's blessings, the monstrous construct bounded towards the Tau lines, spectral maw slavering. It leapt across a wide crevice and barreled into a Tau battlesuit, pinning its victim to the ground, whilst rays of talons peeled back armoured plate to reach the pilot beneath. Black legionaries roared dedications to the Despoiler and their dark guards as they spilled the blood of alien foes. Dark magi let out screams of discordant scrap code, prayers to the Arkifane. Valkar's retinue uttered dissonant incantations directing warp flame and mutating engines, ripping apart Tau machinery and empowering snarling, claw-armed packs of possessed warriors. Vashtorr continued to strain against the restrictive bonds of his physical form. How he despised the limitations forced upon him by the material realm. Stalking forwards behind his heretic Astartes' vanguard, he extended a clawed hand towards a squad of Tau soldiers, crouching behind a low force field. The alien's protective barrier shimmered and began to glow brightly, as its energies were redirected against those it had been designed to protect. The Tau screamed in pain, as intense heat melted armor and seared flesh. Black legionaries fell upon the wounded soldiers with whirling chain axes and the stocks of their bolt guns. It seemed that the Tau had no intention of relinquishing their claim upon the stricken world. More of their sleek vessels descended from the heavens, reinforcements dispatched from orbiting fleets. Hovering barricades and transports plunged through the atmosphere. Battlesuits arced across the skies, soaring through the darkness to bring arm-mounted weapons to bear. Wave after wave of warheads slammed into the battlefield, eradicating cultists and legionaries alike. The Arkifane pressed forward, hammer striking again and again, crushing Tau soldiers to bloody pulp beneath its hell-forged head. Tau vehicles soared overhead, raking fire, shredding Vashtorr's mortal followers and impacting upon his form. He reached out again, focusing his will upon the internal mechanisms of a Tau skimmer, and with a casual gesture, tore it apart from within. Sparks flew, metallic components bursting forth, flames licking from the vehicle's blasted hull. It spiraled to the ground and slammed into a trio of battlesuits, engulfing them in flames. Through the conflagration, Vashtorr trod. The cracked entrance to the ancient temple yawned wide before him. A Tau battlesuit arced down, its optical sensors flickering red, the alien pilot uttering a mechanical projected battle cry. It raised an arm, underslung rotary weapon spinning to life, and fired upon him. Vashtorr looked down to see demonic flesh scorch and peel under the assault, revealing a layer of grinding cogs beneath. The impact caused him to stagger ever so slightly, his physical form flickering. Then he was moving. Iron wings spread wide, a roiling storm of unholy energies propelling him through the air to sweep down upon his victim. "So proud of your ingenuity you are, so reliant upon the mechanical," Vashtorr projected, his voice infiltrating his opponent's communication device. He swept his hammer into the battlesuit's right leg, knocking it to the floor. The Arkifane placed a shod hoof upon the suit's breast and struck again, opening a crack in the armor. From puckered orifices in his flesh-metal form, nematode tendrils darted forth like striking vipers, plunging into the rents in their fallen machine's armor. He could feel fear rippling from the battlesuit's pilot as it attempted to right itself, desperately struggling with haptic controls, barked commands bringing weapon systems to bear, all to no avail. Vashtorr projected a fragment of his adamant will through the battlesuit's delicate wiring, targeting cogitators and neural interfaces, his scrap code overrides spreading throughout subsystems and power grids like an unstoppable virus, wresting control. Nematode manifestations of Vashtorr's will wormed their way into the suit's systems and began pulling it apart from within. Armor seals cracked and peeled, targeting systems flickered and died, life support drained away. Vashtorr could feel the faint panic of the pilot, its weak, insubstantial presence within the warp betraying its fear. The last blinking lights from the battlesuit's form winked out, sparks crackling from its ruined armor. Vashtorr stepped over the wreckage of the Tau battlesuit and strode purposefully towards the ruin-encrusted edifice of the ancient temple. The machinations of mortals were an impediment, but nothing more. He was a being of limitless patience. He would find the lock, and reality would tremble before him. End quote. Now those who are initiated into the setting may have noticed a few fundamental changes. Again. Something I am toying with doing a breakdown on for my patrons. In any case, this is the new lore. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you enjoyed this video, then please do consider liking and subscribing. And thank you for your precious time. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.